During our recent MovieMuse retrospective podcast, the team briefly reviewed Star Wars The Last Jedi. The reality was that we actually had a 20-minute chat about the film, so here is that deleted conversation in full. Please note that this recording features lots of spoilers about the film, quite a bit of swearing, and the editing is not as good as normal. Hope you enjoy. Perhaps surprisingly, one big film from 2017 that didn't make any of our top threes was Star Wars The Last Jedi. We haven't really covered it in any detail. We're going to do that in a future podcast where we're going to dig into some of the controversies surrounding the film. But just quickly, let's go round the table and give it a quick review and a rating out of 5. Gordon?
I thought it was exciting, thrilling. There were some brilliant moments. It brought back some fantastic characters. There were some awesome twists in there that probably we should have expected, but it seems like nobody did. There were also some silly moments that I can understand why people are moaning about them. My biggest issue with it was too much slapstick humour. I just don't think it was necessary to have the stuff with the porgs, Luke milking the beast and things like that. There were just some silly things in there that could have been left out and would have made the film seem a little bit less of a joke. But overall, I loved it, and I will give The Last Jedi 4 out of 5.
My review for the movie views, I said, when it's good, it's very good, but when it's bad, it's awful. Overall, the good outweighs the bad, and the film is fun, with a good story along with the usual action and humour. Not as good as its predecessor, but enjoyable nonetheless, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I'd just add to that, I think the backlash against it is bizarre, I think. It's an enjoyable film. At the end, what do you expect from a Star Wars film? I think some people are expecting too much from these films now. It's something made to entertain kids and fans of the original films and sell lots of merchandise, and if you can't get your head around that, then you should probably stop watching it. Mark Hamill was really good in it, and some of the other characters were better than they were in The Force Awakens. Some were not as good, and overall I thought it was pretty decent. The only issue I had with it really was how they dealt with the fate of Princess Leia, or Carrie Fisher to be more precise, but maybe we'll cover that in more detail on a future podcast. Simon, what were your thoughts on Star Wars?
I quite enjoyed it. I'd have to see it again to really give it an in-depth review, because I just don't get it. The story, there just wasn't a lot to it. I like the Star Wars stuff. I like the music. I like the blasters. But I just didn't get the story. I just didn't think it worked that well. Until I can get back and give it another try, I'll have to give it about 3 out of 5. It wasn't a strong story. There wasn't a lot to it, to be honest. There's a slight chase through space. And those big battle cruisers can't catch up some people running out of fuel.
Well, I mean,
they're just out of reach.
You have to suspend logic with Star Wars, that's the thing, and the people that didn't are the ones that are really struggling with it. I've talked to people at work about it a lot, and there's people who said, like, why didn't the Empire, or whatever they call the First Order, just hyperspace in front of them? Well, yeah, they could have done. You know, why did they go off to the casino planet?
I'm not sure you can, you know. Can you hyperspace that short distance? I don't think you can.
But they knew where they were, and they knew they couldn't hyperspace, so they could have hyperspaced away somewhere and then hyperspace back in front of them. But as soon as they hyperspace away, the others hyperspace elsewhere, and they don't know where they are. But they'd got a hyperspace tracker, which was why the goodies couldn't hyperspace. Again. So, you know, if you start picking holes in the plot, you'll be there all week. So one guy said to me, how come they were chasing the rebels or the resistance for 16 hours or whatever it was, and yet on the planet where Rey and Luke were, it was like 3 or 4 days? It's like, it's a different fucking planet in a different solar system. What makes you think time's running at the same speed? It's like, you know, the holes people are picking, it's just ridiculous. It's a fucking movie made to sell toys, basically.
My mate's worst criticism of it, and he hated it, and he will not shut up about why we didn't find out any backstory about Snoke.
Oh.
And I said to him, basically, Snoke is just like the Emperor. You got no backstory in the original trilogy about the Emperor. Nobody cared. The only backstory you got was once they made that prequel trilogy. So why do you care that you've not got a backstory to him in this? Yeah. It's not important to the story.
I totally agree with you, and I know loads of people are angry about the fact that lots of backstory stuff wasn't.
He was a shit character in Force Awakens, so why do I care?
That's exactly what I said. It's like lots of people are angry about not hearing about his backstory. I'm like, I didn't give a shit. I was just glad to see him die.
If you want.
What made me laugh about when he died was that he's saying, I know everything he thinks, I know everything. We didn't see him lift that lightsaber up and slice you in half. So how can you know everything he's thinking? He must have thought that thought.
He always thought he was using the lightsaber that he got in his hand, didn't he? Yeah, I mean, again, It's just like you just can't overanalyze this stuff, and that's where I went wrong with Rogue One to a certain extent. You've just got to take it for what it is. It's a film designed to entertain people. The humour's always, as I said earlier, it's always subjective. I thought that scene at the beginning with the on hold joke was hilarious, but other people hated it. So
I thought that was funny. I thought nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, I thought that was all right, that one.
I love the little touches, like Luke brushing his shoulder off. They'd fired all those weapons at him, even though it was only a hologram. And stuff. Little touches were good. So I thought some of the humour, I didn't think it was over the top. I thought some of the humour was all right, to be honest.
Yeah.
Even the milking that creature wasn't the end of the world, apart from you drinking it. But
that was cringe-worthy.
It was just didn't need to be there. But I'm like you, Simon. I need to watch it again to get a proper view of it.
I loved the bit, and again, I know people hated this, where, that anticipation of what Luke's going to do, she gives him the lightsaber and he just chucks it over his shoulder. I thought it was brilliant. But people are like, Luke Skywalker would never be that disrespectful to a lightsaber. It's like, fuck off.
Yeah, he would, though. He's just spent all that time in isolation trying to forget all of that. Of course he would.
I know, I just think people just didn't get it. People just didn't get some of the subtleties of what was going on. I mean, there were things I hated about it. The Princess Leia scene was fucking awful, but
I thought that casino thing was interesting, what they'd done in there, but I thought that was totally pointless, to be honest.
I like the casino thing. I think I'm the only person who actually likes that in the whole history of anybody watching that film.
It does look that way, yeah.
The bit that I didn't get was the horse racing thing.
Well, that was purely because they created some lovely computer-generated big-eared horsey things that they wanted to have rampaging through the place. That was one of my other bugbears, was there was way too many marketable, fuzzy CGI critters.
Oh, yeah, there was owl
little looked
things.
Amazing, but there was no point to them other than to be there to look great and show off the CGI and sell some toys later, further on down the line.
Yeah, and Captain Phasma again was a waste of space.
Yep, yeah, again.
Even more so.
Yeah, it's a pity. She could have been a better character, to be honest, but obviously didn't really get used. And then she's gone now anyway, whether you think so anyway. But
well, just on the Leia thing, where she does a Mary Poppins bit, my biggest issue with that was that it was all so perfect. And I actually have no problem with the story that, she's outside and she's starting to die, but she's managing to use the Force to whatever extent that gets her in, but she's near death. My biggest problem with it was if she was out there doing that but looked like she was struggling, her face starts to wrinkle and all sorts, and she looks like she's struggling, it'd been great. But she didn't. Because she still looked perfect, it made her look like Mary Poppins. And I think that was the biggest problem. It was just a badly shot scene. Yeah,
the CG was shit on it as well. She's just like this static statue just floating through the air.
And that's the problem. They didn't need to do it like that. The actual scene itself, on paper, I have no problem with at all.
No, I don't think I do, other than, again, getting nerdy, it'd be like, well, she'd never shown that level of force ability before, but, logic flies out the window, and when you're in a life or death situation, you might find powers you never knew you had in the Star Wars world. What knocked me about it was that they could have used that as an opportunity to kill her off, which would have been a massive shock.
I don't think it would. Everybody expected her to die.
Yeah, I suppose so,
the shot
to kill her off so early in the film.
I thought that was brilliant.
What did you think of having Yoda back in it for that little bit? Was it predictable that he was going to turn up? I thought he was going to die.
It was a bit of a surprise. I didn't mind. It didn't bother me.
Where was he in it? I can't remember.
Talking to Luke, wasn't he?
You can't even remember that he was in it?
No, I can't.
I mean, that was quite a surprising addition, I thought, that Yoda was in it, and you can't even remember that it happened.
No, I'll have to, like I say, I'll watch it again.
Well, I'll do T2 and C-3PO are in it, G, as well.
There can't be a Star Wars film without R2-D2 and C-3PO, can there?
No, but I feel like they didn't use them enough. That was the only problem.
Nah, they're just in there for effect.
And it was the same in the last one as well.
BB-8 operating a Scout Walker, that was a bit fucking ludicrous, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the CGI was pretty poor at that point. Same as when they came out of the cave and Rey lifted the rocks up. It looked so false. It didn't look good at all, that bit. It was just stupid.
What did you think of the choreographed disco fight scene?
Well, it looked great. I mean, to be fair, it was the best looking Star Wars film of all, I think, visually. But yeah, it was a bit silly, but it was entertaining enough. The only thing that really bothered me was a bit of over-reliance on memorable scenes.
Yeah.
Much like Force Awakens, although they did usually put a twist on them, and just that they should have killed Princess Leia off. I don't care that when it was shot she was still alive and she was supposed to survive to the next film. They should have used one of 3 opportunities to kill her off.
I think that's what's good, that they didn't do that.
But now they've painted themselves into a corner because they've got to write her out in the opening scroll now, which is a bit of a lackluster ending for such a beloved character.
I think they'll have some footage that they can use for a final scene. I don't think she'll just be written out in the crawl.
I think it'll skip forward at least 5 to 10 years and she'll be written out in the crawl, and maybe the first scene will be a funeral. But they should have CGI'd her in flying their ship through all the Star Destroyers at the end of Last Jedi.
That was a bit stupid, wasn't it? That ships like that don't have an autopilot. They could have explained a reason for that, but they didn't.
Yeah, what Laura Dern's character could have been the successor to Princess Leia with a bit of reshooting.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, could have swapped them two round and that would have worked.
Yeah.
I did like the fact that she did use the hyperspace to slice the side off that big thing that looked like a stealth bomber, but about 50 billion times bigger. I thought that was quite
great. That scene was really amazing. That was a fantastic scene. That's why Princess Leia should have done it.
Yeah, she should.
She should have sacrificed herself, and that would have been the blaze of glory. And yes, they would have had to use CGI to have her in that position, but not much. And it wouldn't take her much to redo the scene with Laura Dern, where Laura Dern says she'll stay behind, and Leia say, no, I'll stay behind. And I think that would have been a fitting end to that character.
I agree with you. She saves the rebellion. Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, now whatever they do is going to be a bit half-hearted, unfortunately.
But the other thing I thought was a bit silly is when that happened and Finn and what's her name was on that ship, they were just about to get executed. And all the others are dead and they're the only two lying there still alive.
That's Star Wars.
Yeah. I was like, oh, kicks out of here. This is just ridiculous.
Well, it is, but, that's Star Wars has always been like that.
Yeah, things happen like that in all the Star Wars films.
What did you think about the sort of abandoning of Rey's backstory? There was a suggestion about who her parents might be in The Force Awakens, and then they basically just discarded it, seemingly, in The Last Jedi.
I'm not sure I'd say it was an abandoning. Who's to say that wasn't the plan all along? That it was always one of those kind of red herrings? I prefer the story the way they did it. I prefer that she doesn't have this fantastical parentage. The worst possible thing could have been that she was Luke or Han's kid. Either of those would have been terrible. So I'm quite pleased that they went with that. I'm not really that bothered about that backstory.
No, nor am I, but I also think that she might still have a backstory, and that what Kylo Ren said to her was just something he said to her at the time to try and get her on his side. So I don't necessarily think that the backstory has been abandoned.
I think that if they go with that, then they've copped out, and I'll be disappointed, because that's like saying, oh, you can say anything because, he's a bad guy, so he tells lies. So you can just change any story that he's said.
Well, I guess it depends whether he knows or not. What about you, Si? What did you think?
It was a bit sad that he got up to the point that he went to that place and there's all of her lined up, all those images, and you think she's going to find out and then she doesn't. Yeah, I was a bit disappointed. I thought you were going to find out what it was, but in a way I didn't. So I have no real thoughts on it at all. It didn't bother me at all if she finds out who her parents are. It's not really relevant to the story, I don't think.
I did think Rey kind of vanished from the film about 2/3 of the way through. And I thought that was a bit of a surprise, given that you kind of got the feeling from Force Awakens that she was going to be the main character that the whole trilogy was going to be built around. And so for her to vanish for a good half hour or so was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
The one thing I've seen a lot of people unhappy about, and I have to say this did jar me a bit as well, was the real world language. The main example of this is the swearing. So it's got proper swears in it, it's got son of a bitch and something about ass in it as well. I can't remember exactly what. And in the past that would have been, nerf herder or something like that. And there was a few other examples of like using Godspeed in one bit of it as well. It wasn't very Star Warsy language. Did that bother either of you two?
Not particularly.
I think if I was making the film, I wouldn't have done that. I don't think it bothers me. But yeah, I would have preferred them not to have gone too urban.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily bothered me that much. It was just a bit jarring, maybe. What about the new characters? Were there any of the new characters that really stood out? I didn't think any of the newly introduced in this film characters were particularly great. Maybe the girl, Rose, was alright, but the other two, the Laura Dern and Benicio del Toro, I thought they're quite top quality actor and actress, and they didn't really do a lot with them, and it seemed like a bit of a waste of time, really.
I think Laura Dern they probably wasted because she's not coming back. But Benicio del Toro could be in future films, I assume.
Yeah.
His character initially I didn't like, but by the end of the film he'd won me over, and I'd be quite pleased if he was in the next films. But yeah, it's a shame Laura Dern can't come back because I thought she was a good character, and I know you said maybe they should have had Leia pilot the ship and she should have carried on as the leader, and maybe that would have worked, and I would like to have seen her again in the Star Wars universe.
if they'd done that thing with Leia piloting the ship into the other one and her carrying on, I think that would have been the best way to do it. None of the other characters really, it was still mainly the main ones from before that worked out. You know, it was just pretty much normal Star Wars sort of characters that come and go throughout the films. So yeah, nothing too exciting for me in the fact that there's new characters. It was most of the older ones or the ones we'd already seen that provided most interest. I just think using things like R2-D2 and C3PO are just sort of cameo roles. It's just like, just throwing them in there just to keep it Star Warsy. No real call for them to be there really, but I suppose it just pleases a few people. Nice for Luke to come back and catch up and see them again.
That scene with Luke and R2-D2 was one of my favourite scenes in the film, actually. Quite a touching scene, given what happens later in the film. It was a nice moment, but I don't think we'll be seeing much of those characters in future films.
No, I think their time's up, really.
We've got to see R2-D2 C3PO in the final film, though, haven't we? It's law.
It is the law, but in a way, after what happened in this film, they can do whatever they like. I think that's one of the positives that come out of it, and I enjoyed the film generally anyway, but all bets are off really about what they do in the last film now, because there's a lot of stuff in this one that you probably didn't really think was going to happen. I think Luke dying was probably a likely outcome, given it was centred on him, but I do think there's a lot of things that, you know, obviously kill off Snoke and all that kind of stuff. You kind of thought that might be what happened in the last film, so now it will be interesting to see where they go with the final one.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to end this whole thing. It's just going to be, I don't know, it's going to be strange.
Where it goes in the final film, I can say, like I say, with almost everything, I don't care. I love to be surprised by a film, and that's why I loved it when they did the Leia twist, because I just wasn't expecting it, and that's what I really like about films. So if they can surprise me in the final one, and we can have a happy ending to this 9-film saga, that's all I care about. I don't want to think about it too much, and that's part of the problem of social media now, is everyone thinks so hard about these things that it ruins it for themselves, and that's what I'm avoiding, and I'm not going to even contemplate where it might go, because I don't want to know.
Okay, so let's just finish off like we've always done when we're talking about Star Wars then, ranking the episodes. So do you want to do that again, and we'll see where episode 8 fits in the overall series of 9 films now? Mine's changed actually, I think. Obviously it's changed because it's got a new film in it, but I think my overall one has changed anyway, so I'll go first. So I'm going to go Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars A New Hope, Force Awakens, Return of the Jedi, Last Jedi, Rogue One, Revenge of the Sith, Phantom Menace, and the other one, Episode 2. Gordon?
Mine's going to be very different to a lot of people's, but it always is, because Phantom Menace appears so high. So first we've got Empire Strikes Back, then Star Wars A New Hope, The Force Awakens, The Phantom Menace, The Last Jedi, Rogue One, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, and Attack of the Clones, miles and miles and miles behind.
You really do rate Phantom Menace higher than it deserves, but that's fair enough.
Higher than the rest of the world.
Probably, yeah. Si?
Right, so first Star Wars, A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Attack of the Clones.
What? Really?
Sorry, The Phantom Menace is what I meant. Then it's Rogue One, The Force Awakens, Revenge of the Sith, The Last Jedi, and then last of all, Attack of the Clones.
Wow, Last Jedi, second from bottom.
Wasn't that great? I didn't think. There's nothing to it, to be honest.
I think I liked it because there wasn't much to it.
Just nothing really happened, and then I just didn't really gel to me.
Right, I think that'll do us then.